Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Octagon Daddies. He's Dave, I'm Mike. Today we're going to do some UFC 285 analysis and picks. Really exciting card. We've been looking forward to this one. So let's jump right into it.
Yes.
The early prelims, we've got Esteban Ribovics versus Loic Rajabov. Who do you got in this one, Dave?
In this one, I have Ribovics winning this one. I'm not sure how he's going to win. He definitely looked really good on the Contender Series. He's a big puncher. He's got a lot of power. All of his wins have been inside the distance. He's got six TKOs, 5 submissions. Whereas Razabov, um, he really likes to go the distance, at least very recently in his career. His last win was by submission in Eagle FC. He does have a decent stand-up game. He's a big-time wrestler. I just think Ribovics is so much more powerful that he will probably win this one very handily. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one. I think there's a lot of similarities between these guys, Ruvics and Radzabov. Both fighting in the UFC for the first time. They both like to be pretty aggressive and have kind of a pressuring style. Ribovics can stand and strike well, and also has good grappling skills. He likes to stay a little bit more at range, whereas Radzabov likes to get in closer and brawl. And he has really good wrestling. I think the biggest factor for me coming into this one is competition, honestly. Radzabov has fought all over the world, and he even spent like 2 full seasons in the PFL. And Ribovics just fought exclusively in like South American regional promotions, Peru and Argentina mostly.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a pretty explosive first fight of the night. But I actually have Rajabov kind of riding his experience in wrestling
Okay.
for a win in this one.
Nice.
Yep. All right, next fight up on the early prelim, we have Damon Blackshear and Farid Basharat. I'll kick us off with this one here. So Blackshear, he's got a good deal of high-level experience coming into this one, but he's
He
been
does.
really inconsistent with his results, so it's hard to get kind of a good read on him. Farid Basharat, big fan of him and his brother,
Mhm.
Javid Basharat, the Bash brothers. So Farid coming into this one, undefeated. All of his fights were on the English regional scene.
Yeah.
Both of these guys really like to try to confuse their opponents with a lot of feints, I noticed.
Yeah.
Um, Basharat, I think he's going to be a little bit more busy and urgent of the two. And he seems to mix in kicks really well into his stand-up. So, um, Blackshear started off really strong against his fight. I think it was on short notice against Yusuf Zalal
Yes.
in his last fight, but he slowed down to the point where he was absolutely dominated in round three. I think it was like a
He
10-8
was.
round. I think he might have got
Mhm.
knocked down. So it was a draw that fight. So I just think Basharat has more to offer here. So I'm going to take Basharat in this one.
Okay. I'm actually on the same line as you. I got Basharat in this one. I think the downside to Blackshear is he does absorb a lot of punches, and that is where Basharat shines. He's a super striker. He's landing 7.73 significant strikes per minute, which is absolutely insane. Um, Blackshear, if he can get the fight to the ground, I think he has a chance. Uh, but if this stays on its feet, like I think it will, Basharat will win this one handily. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually ends up getting a TKO just by overwhelming Blackshear.
Yeah, I can totally see that. So we're on the same page there. Next fight, we've got Jessica Penne versus Tabitha Ricci. How do you see this fight playing out?
For this one, I actually do think Ricci is the better fighter. I feel like Penne is just going to end up being a stat patter for her. She is really good at getting the fight to the ground. She's not a big time striker, Ricci. She will take the fight to the distance. Penne, on the other hand, as she goes up in rank and she starts to fight more experienced fighters, she generally loses. Again, she's a low volume striker. She takes a lot of punches. She really hasn't been that active in the UFC. She's only had 7 fights over 9 years. I think at this point she's probably fighting for a contract or potentially to not get cut. I know there's not a lot in the straw weight So her staying around is probably going to happen. But I do think if she does get overwhelmed in this fight and loses to Ricci, she will most likely get cut. Um, but again, I think Ricci is going to pull this one out. She'll probably point her to death, try to keep the fight close, do a little bit of dirty boxing up against the fence. I think she'll win by decision.
Okay, yeah, it's funny. Penny's like an OG of women's MMA. She's
She
40
is.
years old now. She's been around forever. She's got a pretty good all around game. She's not known to be a very busy fighter though.
Yeah,
Um, Ricci, I like that she has really good judo.
she
And she doesn't
does.
really hide the fact that she's trying to take you down. And she's still really successful with that. I do think that Ricci has a pretty big strength advantage here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she's just going to wear Penne out, honestly. And I just don't see much trouble for Ricci taking Penne down and just grinding out a decision victory. And I think that's the most likely outcome here. So give me Ricci as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see her grinding this one out, either up against the fence or on the ground. If she gets on top, she's going to lay on her for the rest of that round.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would stink if Penne lost and got cut just because she's been around forever, but I just don't see it playing out for her in this one either.
I agree.
All right, we've got Mana Martinez and Cameron Simon. So for this one, I actually think this fight has potential to be closer than the odds indicate, actually. So Simon enters, it's his second UFC fight, and he is coming off a big TKO victory. And then prior to that, he was,
Yeah.
I want to say he was undefeated in like the South African regional
Yeah.
promotions. Martinez is 2-1 in the UFC. He's pretty aggressive and powerful. Whereas Simon, I feel is he's explosive, but he's a little bit more calculated and well-rounded overall.
Yeah.
Uh, Ultimately, I think Martinez won't be able to finish Simon, and that's his most likely path to victory. So Simon, just to me, has a little bit more versatility to his game. He's a little bit more fluid in his movement and his defense.
Mm-hmm.
So I see Simon coming out with the victory here. What do you
Okay.
got on this one?
Yeah, I'm actually on the same page. I think it's going to be a Simon victory. He, like you said, he's got that one TKO in his UFC debut. He seems like he's always looking for the finish. He definitely outstrikes his opponents. He tries to overwhelm them, which I do think is a good possibility here. Martinez seems to take just about as much as he gives when it comes to striking on the feet. He was on the Dana White Contender Series back in 2020. He lost to Draco Rodriguez, and it really wasn't a close fight. Martinez, all of his fights in the UFC, that 2-1 record, they've all gone the distance. So we do know he has the stamina advantage, most likely against Simon. But I don't think stamina is going to be an issue. I think Simon, for as aggressive as he has in the South African regionals, he has the ability to stay up longer in the fights. He's not somebody that's just going to kind of blow his load in the first round and then really start to let off of the gas. I think he'll win probably by a decision. Martinez definitely has a stronger chin than probably the majority of the competition he's faced so far in his career. So I would probably go over 2.5 rounds and take him to win by decision, Simon.
Good pick. Good pick. All right. Now, all aboard the hype train here. We got Ian Gary and Song
Ooh.
Kanan. What do you see playing out?
So for this one, I want to jump all over Gary. He's a super high volume puncher. He's got a little bit of pop. He doesn't get taken down much. He's got great stamina. He goes the distance. Um, Kanan Song, I mean, he's 4-2 in the UFC. That doesn't just happen by accident. He's a really solid striker. He's got good power. He will do everything possible to keep this fight on his feet, though. If he gets taken down to the ground, I don't think it will last any longer than a minute or two. He gets dominated every time his back hits the canvas. So for this one, I'm going to go Gary. I'm hesitant to say he's going to win this outside of it going the distance. So I would just take the money line on him if I was betting it.
Okay. All right. And yeah, I mean, Ian Gary coming into this, like I said, with a lot of hype. I think he's like minus 800 on the money line to win.
Yeah.
Song Kanan is dangerous, like you said. I'm a big fan of Gary, though. I know sometimes with these, younger hyped guys, people can be a little, I don't know, a little timid with them and, wanting them to show a lot. He's coming off two decision wins in the UFC. Prior to that, he's just been getting a ton of finishes. Obviously, the level of competition is substantially higher now that he's in the UFC.
Mhm.
Um, but I think Gary, one thing I noticed about him besides his skill, which is pretty obvious, is I think he has a ton of fight IQ to go along with the talent.
He
I
does.
think he takes what's there. I don't think he tries to force anything.
Yep.
Um, and even Kanan being as dangerous as he is, and his fights always being exciting, he kind of reminds me somewhat of Cody Garbrandt, who we're going to talk a little bit about later,
Yeah.
in that he's got super speed, power, but man, that chin, it's pretty weak. So
Hmm.
I honestly, it just seems like Song Kanan needs to find a big shot, probably pretty early, or he's going to get overwhelmed. And I'm
Yeah.
actually going to really say, even though Gary's coming off somewhat safe decision victories, I think Gary's going to finish this in the first round. I think he's going to
Ooh.
quickly get Kanan out of there, and he's going to be more impressive than he was in the last two fights. So give me Gary by a quick finish.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Next one, we've got Julian Marquez and Marc-Andre Barriault. I'll start off on this one. Um, Honestly, to me, this is like the who cares fight of the night. I'm really not into this one too much.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm with you
so,
there.
so I guess one of the more interesting nicknames in the sport belongs to Marquez, the Cuban Missile Crisis. No
Yeah.
idea how he got that nickname, but it's interesting. All right. But Marquez comes in as kind of a slight dog. I think he should be a slight favorite, maybe. Um, he has wins over better fighters overall, slightly, in my opinion, but neither of these guys have been very consistent. I think Burial is a little bit more explosive, a little bit more impressive on that front. They
Yeah.
both have pretty similar skills overall. Um, so good matchmaking here, but I'm sort of over talking about this fight. So give me Marquez.
Okay. We're actually on different pages here. I do think Barriot's going to win this one. I think his ability to box is probably going to weigh heavy on this fight, especially with Marquez, who likes to keep this fight on his feet. Outside of that, Barriot is prone to being taken down. So this is a phenomenal matchup for him. He was taken down 8 times against Anthony Hernandez back in September on a fight night. I think it was Sandhagen who was the head of that card. 8 times in one fight. That's not easy to do. Like you have to have zero takedown defense. The only thing that would surprise me is if Marquez decides to go that route where he shoots unexpectedly because nobody else is expecting it. And he gets a couple takedowns and he's able to grind Barriot out. But I do think that if this does stay on their feet, I think Barriot has the better hands. I think he's the better striker. And he'll probably win it by points. I don't see this one ending any other way.
Okay. Yeah, I am not confident at all in that pick. Um,
No,
but
not at all.
uh, next one is actually a very good matchup here. We got a couple Brazilian flyweights going at it: Viviane Araujo and Amanda Ribas.
Yeah.
Um, what do you got on this one?
For this one, I do like Amanda Ribas. Her last loss was to Caitlin Chukagian. And I mean, she's no slouch. She's been around for a while. She's fighting at the top of the division constantly. Um, what impressed me the most is that Ribas has wins over Mackenzie Dern and Paige Van Zant. Not that it was the end of Van Zant's UFC career when she got in the ring with her, so there really wasn't much good Paige Van Zant going on if there ever really was good Paige Van Zant. But it's a notable win. Ribas has really good defense on the feet. She's got great takedown defense. She likes to take the fight to the mat as well. I think this is going to be a struggle between the two of them. Like it's a super even matchup. Arujo, on the other hand, I mean, her last loss was to Amanda Grasso, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. And it was a decision loss. So she held her own in it. She's a super active puncher. She definitely likes to throw her hand. She averages about 4.8 significant strikes landed per minute. She takes about 5.5 per minute, so she is prone to getting hit. Um, Herself, she likes to take the fight to the mat as well. She averages a little over 2 takedowns per fight, and she's almost impossible to take down. She's 90% on her takedown defense since she's been in the UFC. I think this is going to come down to who the better striker is, and I think that is Rebus. I would take her money line on this.
Yeah, I think I'm right in step with you, honestly, on this fight. So, they both have that common loss, like you said, to Caitlin Chukagian,
Mhm.
um, which makes me a little hesitant just in picking in general. Caitlin Chukagian is solid. She's technical, but I don't think she hits very hard. I feel like both of these women are tougher than her, so I don't know how they lost to her really. But Araujo, she's more of a pure boxer in terms of her stand up.
Yeah.
Even like her guard is like a boxing style guard on the feet, and Rebus is more diverse,
Mhm.
has more of a kickboxing style, Muay
Yeah.
Thai, and she works in kicks to kind of keep range. She's a little bit more dynamic there. They both have pretty good jujitsu skills. Could be one of those situations where they kind of cancel each other out there. So I
Yeah.
also see this coming down to kind of a stand-up war. And ultimately, I also think Rebus is going to be successful in kind of keeping Araujo at a comfortable distance. So yeah, give me Rebus just to outpoint her and win the fight.
Okay.
All right, next one I am pretty excited about. Derek Brunson and Dricus du Plessis.
Yes.
I'm really excited about this one. Derek Brunson, the great Derek Brunson. I feel like he's been around forever, but he's always underestimated a bit. I feel like
Hmm.
um, he's taken on a powerhouse though, like Dricus du Plessis,
And he's on a
one of the
roll.
strongest. He's so strong and athletic. I don't know if people know that about him. And obviously he's a lot younger. Thing about Brunson is in his earlier days, like he did carry a lot of power to go along with his
Hmm.
like outstanding wrestling. He doesn't really have that power anymore.
Yeah.
He's still dangerous. He's still, winning fights.
Yeah.
Um, he's known for his toughness, although he can be maybe questioned a bit with his chin because I think he's been knocked out about 6 times. But I think for Brunson, unfortunately, I think this is actually a pretty bad matchup for him. I mentioned the strength and athleticism of Dricus, and I think that's going to be the difference, honestly. I don't think Brunson will be able to withstand him. The biggest question mark I have, and the biggest um, thing I'm worried about a little bit with du Plessis is that he usually comes out going nuts in the first round. And in the second and especially third round, he doesn't really have much left in the tank. And Brunson is kind of good at finishing strong. So I guess that's the only question I have, but I don't think it'll get to that point. And I think du Plessis is going to win by knockout.
Okay. I actually like that. That's exactly what I have written down here.
Hmm.
Duplessis by TKO. The only thing that really does scare me is his gas tank, like you said. He is definitely susceptible to being taken down. I do think in this situation, it's a big step up in competition for him. He's fighting a guy that has legitimate knockout power. Not that it's not always there, but he has legitimate knockout power. Derek Brunson, he's been around forever. You don't get the 14 wins in the UFC without knowing how to fight. Um, the biggest thing though is I know Dricus likes to take people down to the mat and pound on them. He does average about 3 takedowns per fight. Um, Brunson is next to impossible to take down as well. He's got 89% takedown defense across 20 fights in the UFC. That's pretty damn good.
Well,
I think this does come down to striking. This fight needs to stay on its feet for Dricus to really dominate like he can. And if it does stay on its feet, I don't think it's going to last long. The power that he has and the damage that Brunson's taken over his career, I think they finally that they match each other perfectly for Dricus to win this one big time and have a showstopper type of performance.
absolutely, absolutely. Oh, next fight we have really interesting one. Cody Garbrandt versus Trevin Jones.
Mhm.
What do you think's gonna happen in this one? It's kind of tough to predict.
I think that this fight is almost a stat pattern for Cody. I think they're trying to get the wheels back under him. It's a make or break fight for him. He's been so up and down. I don't know if there's been a bigger fall off for a UFC superstar so quickly than somebody like Cody. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost the Font by a decision. He got knocked out by Kai Kara France, which is a little surprising, but Cody's chin is very suspect at this point in his career. He either knocks somebody out or he gets knocked out. There is no in between. There's no decisions. This gets to the midway point of the second round, and he's either going to sleep or he's putting Trevin Jones to sleep. There's no other way this is going to happen. I think, again, though, this is a stat pattern. It's a confidence builder for Cody. Jones isn't a bad fighter. I mean, he's got 4 fights under his belt, 5 fights under his belt in the UFC. He did have that 1 no contest. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, and he takes a lot of punches. He does tend to go the distance, though. So he's got a good chin, but there's not a lot of people that have the power that Garbrandt has, especially in the bantamweight division. I do think he's going to land, Cody will land 1 or 2 really solid punches and get the knockout in this, probably at some point in the second round.
All right. I like the faith in Cody here to turn it around. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a battle of who gets knocked out first in this one. Garbrandt, former bantamweight champion, but has fallen on some tough times since then, like you mentioned. His like rise to power in the bantamweight division was just like, because of his incredible boxing, which is a great combination of speed and power. It's unbelievable. But in getting to that championship, he was really just knocking guys out before he could get hit. So, we've seen the fall, and we've seen when he can't just get guys out of there right away. We've seen that glass chin, unfortunately, with him. I think moving down to flyweight probably was a bad decision, which is why he's back in bantamweight. Typically, when you have to cut more weight, he was probably thinking he was going to carry that power down, which he probably did. But sometimes that even makes your chin a little bit weaker.
It does.
So I'm glad to see him back at bantamweight now. Yeah, I think you're right with the matchmaking. I think, the UFC is doing everything they can to kind of get Garbrandt back on track. But that being said, Trevin Jones is a wild man himself. So,
yes,
he's going to go for the kill on Garbrandt. He knows Garbrandt's weakness. So I'm kind of making this pick on a hope and a prayer because I like Cody. I feel like he's due for some better luck. I know it's silly picking based on that. But I always have this like idea in my head that finally Cody will decide to like use his wrestling background to sort of set up his boxing, because he really, former state high school champion, wrestling, division 2 college wrestler. He's got the skills. He just doesn't ever use them. So again, hope and a prayer. Give me Garbrandt. Besides his glass chin, I like what he brings to the table.
Okay.
All right. Another hype train matchup. Excited for this one too. Bo Nickel and Jamie Pickett. I'll start us off for this one. So I don't usually like these like younger hyped guys coming into the UFC. I don't know why, but Bo Nickel, I'm kind of on board with him. I am on board with him. His wrestling is world class. 3-time Division 1 national champion. In his last fight, Contender Series fight, one of his, I think, 3 pro fights.
Yeah.
It didn't last very long. It was like 50 seconds. But what I loved was that he landed a big overhand right, and his opponent, I think, was like stunned or perhaps being knocked down when he took him down. I couldn't really tell exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But I was really impressed by that sequence and that overhand right in particular. So yeah, I mean, Pickett took this fight. His quote this week saying he had no idea who Bo Nickel was, but they wanted to offer him more money, so he was down to fight. So great job. He's probably, I don't know. I mean, this guy's hanging on for dear life in terms of his UFC contract status as well. The biggest stat of the night is like the fact that Pickett, who's I don't think a very good fighter, he still has double the amount of UFC fights than Bo Nickel has pro fights. So it's 6-3, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
But it's not going to matter. It's just not going to matter. This look, Pickett is decent. He's a decent fighter, but he's going up against a guy that he has no answer for with Nichols wrestling. So
Oh
I don't
yeah.
think he'll be able to prevent that whatsoever. So for me, this is not a question on who wins this fight. It's just will it get out of the first round? I don't know. I'm not sure. So I'll take the safer route and just say Bo's going to steal the show, but I don't know if he'll get the finish or not in the first round.
Okay. So we're on the same page here. Pickett is definitely, whether or not he knew who Nickel was, he is capitalizing on this kid's rise to fame. And I mean, he's on the main card for what will probably be the biggest event of the year. Maybe the second biggest event of the year if Jones pulls it out in the title fight, because there are reports that Stipe is going to get the winner of this fight at International Fight Week. So that would probably go ahead and trump this card if it ends up being Jones Stipe. But I'm getting off topic here. Let me get back onto the fight. Nickel and Pickett. So biggest thing for me here is the wrestling. Pickett got submitted by Kyle Dawkins. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
It's not impressive.
That's not impressive at all. He's got below average takedown defense. He can stop it maybe 60% of the time. Nickel's a monster, especially when it comes to wrestling. Like you said, he did land a really nice overhand right in his last Contender Series fight. My hope is he doesn't think he needs to show that he has hands, like that he's able to stand up and trade punches with somebody. And I hope he just handles this like he should. If he does, my prediction for this is that he's going to win it in the second minute of the first round. I don't think it gets to the midway point of this fight. It'll be somewhere between 1 minute and 1 minute and 59 seconds of elapsed time in the first round. He wins by submission.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point you made too about like, Nickel coming in. Is he going to maybe try to prove a point with a stand up, or is he just going to stick to his bread and butter? And I think that's just going to determine how long the fight goes. But yeah,
yes.
I'm with you 100%. All right, next one. Really interesting fight too. Mateusz Gamrot versus Jalen Turner. How do you see that one playing out?
So for this one, I was on the fence for a little while. I really thought Gamrot was going to win this one, and it probably wasn't going to be that close. After thinking, doing a little bit of research, something is pulling me towards Jalen Turner. I think his ability to let his hands fly and strike, he should be able to keep Gamrot at a distance. He's got good takedown defense, which Gamrot loves to try to get the fight to the ground. I mean, he's averaging 4.6 takedowns per fight. That's pretty impressive. He's got solid takedown D as well. Gamrot, a little bit above 90%. Turner's no slouch himself. I mean, he stops the takedown around 77% of the time. But Turner's also not a slouch on the ground either. He can hold his own. Gamrot may have the advantage when it comes to strength, but Turner's silky smooth, especially on even on the ground, on his back. He can land some punches from his back, but on his feet, he is silky smooth. I think he may potentially use his jab, keep Gamrot at a distance, try to stay away from the clinch as much as he can. If he can kind of stuff the shots, when Gamrot shoots to try to get him to the ground, if he can stuff them, he'll win this by points. Turner.
Is that going to be your pick?
That is my pick. Turner by decision.
Okay. Well, I was really excited to be the contrarian with you on this because I was sure you're going to go Gamrot, but you didn't. Gamrot, I mean, he's an unbelievable fighter. Turner's really skilled as well. So I know not just us, but a lot of people talk about reach all the time, and that's not like the end all be all.
Yeah.
But the tarantula, he uses his reach and his long limbs better than anyone. Like as long as he really seems even longer. Like it's just he enforces it so well in his fights. Um, you mentioned that Gamrot, he's like a bulldog. I mean, this guy
Yeah.
attempts like what seems like 20 takedowns a fight, and he lands a ton. So obviously, he looks to do that with his brawling, striking skills.
Yeah.
But I actually love Turner's ground game. I think he can really shine here. So I do think Gamrot will take him down, but I don't think that's going to be a huge negative for Turner. I think Turner um, is so skilled and
Mm.
so silky smooth on the ground, and you see him when he like wraps his legs around guys when they're
Hmm.
grappling, just like suffocating them with his legs. Um, so I kind of see the fight getting to the mat, and I see Turner kind of getting the best of it when that happens.
Really?
Yes. So
Wow.
uh, sometimes I watch these fighters, and I've always liked watching Jalen Turner, but sometimes like you see a fighter, and whether it's in one fight in particular that you can point it out, or maybe over a few fights, but like you look at this guy and you say to yourself, this guy just like leveled up. Like Henry Cejudo did that. Always a great fighter.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden he's like, oh my gosh, this guy's like unbelievable now. And I'm not comparing Turner to Cejudo, but I think he's had kind of that level up. I think he's taken it to the next level. I think he's
Okay.
very underrated, and I think Turner's going to win this fight. So he's going to make a huge statement on Saturday. I've got Turner.
Wow. I'm impressed that we're on the same page on this one. I thought I was going out on a limb.
Yeah, yeah. So much for that. Anyway, next fight. We got Jeff Neal versus Shavkat Rakhmonov, and I'll start us off here. First of all the props in the world to Jeff Neal for taking this fight against an absolute terror in Rakhmonov.
Uh-huh.
I'm a big fan of Jeff Neal. I love watching him fight. To
Yeah.
me, he might be the most like composed guy in the octagon. Just watching him, he's just so cool in there.
Oh, yeah.
I love the guy. I love watching him fight. But man, with Shavkat, I don't even know where to start with this guy. Like I truly think he's easily one of the most talented fights I've ever seen in mixed martial arts. I think he's that good.
Okay.
Where is this guy not incredible? He's maybe my favorite fighter right now in the UFC. He can do it all at a super high level. So coming in as a huge favorite against a great fighter like Jeff Neal, that says a lot to me. I know obviously like the money line and Vegas odds don't necessarily like mean anything, but the fact that he's coming in at like minus 500 against a fighter like Jeff Neal
Yeah.
is crazy. Jeff Neal does carry a lot of power to go along with that composure I spoke about, but
Hmm.
Shavkat, he's just going to keep him off balance. I don't think he's going to allow him to be comfortable in there. So Neal, very tough to finish. I don't know if he's been finished since maybe Kevin Holland finished him like 6 years ago, whatever that was.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think Shavkat's going to find a late stoppage in the third round.
Okay. I have Shavkat winning by submission, and I could see it happening later in the fight. Neil's got really, really solid stamina. He's silky smooth striker as well. And like you said, he's got power to go with it. I I just my concern, I mean, can Neil catch Shavkat once? Because that's all it's going to take. Is if he can land that right hand once, it might shock Shavkat just enough to have him back off. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't. I think he's going to get bulldog the whole fight. Shavkat knows that he's a good striker, that Neil's a good striker. He knows that there is that chance with the power that he holds that it could do some damage to him. I see this one ending by submission. I think he's going to get ground up against the cage, Neil, the whole fight. It's going to be some dirty boxing on the side of the ring, on the side of the octagon. If it gets down to the ground, it's going to be pure domination, and that's where Neil really lacks the ability to keep up in this fight. As soon as this gets on the ground, he's going to get ground to a pulp, and he'll try to get up. He'll give up his back, and it'll probably be a rear naked choke.
Okay.
So yeah,
I actually thought it sounded like you were going to pull a not so fast, my friend, and take Jeff Neal.
no,
So nice job talking that up. I guess you're just trying to make your analysis more interesting, and you did. I was on the edge of my seat, so good job.
no, thank you.
Um, but yeah, I think we've both got Rachmaninoff there. All right, let's get to the first of the two title fights here. We've got
Got some big ones.
Alexa Grasso matching up against Valentina Bullet Shevchenko. What do you see happening here?
Oh, this one I can't pick against Bullet. It's so hard. I mean, she struggled a little bit against Talia Santos. She did. That fight was a lot closer than I think the world thought it was going to be. I don't think anybody saw a split decision happening. If that was if you could make that bet, it was probably plus 25,000 for that fight to end in a split decision. Bullet is she's got endless energy. She overwhelms everybody. She can take the fight to the ground. She can submit you. She can knock you out. There's nothing she can't do. Grasso, on the other hand, I mean, she's riding a 4-fight win streak. She can throw her hands too. She needs to keep this fight on her feet, though. If it goes to the ground, she will get dominated. Valentina's just that much stronger than everybody else in this flyweight division. If it stays on her feet, the cardio holds up, it'll go to a decision, which is what I think will happen. I think Valentina kind of wants to prove that the struggles she showed against Santos were kind of an aberration. It wasn't real. And she's going to try to keep the fight on her feet. And I think she's going to point her to death. Fight gets to the ground, she'll be able to grind it out and probably hold her there for the rest of the round. But I think she wins this 5 rounds to 0. It'll end up being a bloodbath. Valentina will win this by decision.
Okay. Yeah, it was interesting kind of listening to Shevchenko kind of just answer some questions this week. And, she got a lot of questions about her last fight with Santos. You mentioned that it was a split decision win. Some people are, poo-pooing her for not thoroughly dominating. My thoughts on that is, first of all, it's hard to stay on top for a long time and defend as much as she has. Was it her best effort? No. Did Santos bring it? Yes. Do I think Shevchenko is somehow declining? Absolutely not. I really don't. Shevchenko's just she's like a lifelong martial artist. I think since she was like 6 years old, like her dad and her sister just been like hardcore into training martial arts. And I think the interesting thing about it is she's not one of those people that always talks about oh yeah, I'm in camp and I'm grinding. I think she just loves doing it. And she has such great like balance in her life. She's into, the dancing and the shooting range, all that sort of thing. And I think that provides like great balance. So I really think that she's more talented than Grasso, like, period. But I think even more so, I think her mental edge that she has over like all of her opponents in the octagon is huge, and I don't think it's talked about a lot. The intangibles. So yeah, I just think she's coming in. I don't know. Who knows how Grasso is gonna take being in the limelight like this here. She does have great boxing skills, so I mean, if she can get it inside of Valentina's range and somehow limit Valentina from those devastating kicks and just kind of box, yeah, I guess she's got a shot. But I don't see that happening. I can't see her just sort of imposing her will like that. So that being said, yeah, Shevchenko, I have her winning this one as well.
Okay.
All right. And finally, we've got the main event of the evening, Cyril Gane versus the GOAT, John Jones.
Oh, you're starting it off with the GOAT.
I know, I have to. It's just, I don't know where to start for this one. I mean, I'll talk about kind of what everybody else is talking about. And number one, it's, John Jones has just been eating pizza for the last 3 years. I don't know that I feel like he's such a disciplined guy that like he's taken the time to kind of put on the weight slowly over the last few years. So I think he's kind of built his body correctly. I don't think he's just throwing weight on and jumping to heavyweight. He's a big dude naturally. But I think he's kind of, again, worked his game into his body. Are there questions about, what he's going to look like in terms of, his speed and his athleticism that we saw with him at light heavyweight? Yeah, absolutely. We'll see how it translates. I'm not one to doubt him. So I think he'll be ready to go there. Cyril Gane, he is unbelievable in terms of kickboxing. If this was a pure kickboxing match, I wouldn't really debate it. I would easily take Cyril Gane.
Yes.
Um, he is a naturally bigger guy. Um,
Hmm.
People always talk about John Jones, and rightly so, being like extremely athletic in there, and he really is. But I don't think people realize Cyril Gane is an unbelievable athlete himself. I mean, he was a really good soccer player, fluid in his movements when he was playing soccer. Um, he's really good. John Jones obviously kicking is a big part of his game, but you can say the same for Gane here. The biggest sort of negative for Gane that everyone's been pointing to is, well, he was taken down several times by Francis Ngannou. Uh, and that's not a great thing. I mean, I guess he was probably caught off guard because Francis takes nobody down. You guy's a pure boxer. Um, but that should be a concern if you are pulling for Gane or perhaps betting on Gane. Um, a lot of people are saying, well, John Jones, he does have great wrestling, but maybe it's declined over the last few years. He hasn't used it a lot. And maybe so, but I would also go out on a limb and say, even if that's the case, he's coming up. His wrestling is worlds better than Francis Ngannou's wrestling
Oh,
is.
yes.
So I think Gane is could be in trouble there. Ultimately, I actually had a lot of confidence in picking John Jones up until kind of this week. I started thinking about it and doing some research. And then I just started to get a little bit worried. Maybe I kind of scared myself here. Gane is a monster. And, Jones in his last couple state fights, which were mostly stand up, maybe it was a motivation issue, but he hadn't looked that dominating. He really hadn't. And Cyril
Hmm.
Gane, if it stays a stand up war, wouldn't at all shock me if he got the better of John Jones. That being said, John is like a master at game planning. He's got a high fight IQ. He's going to do whatever it takes to win this fight. He's going to prove that he's the greatest of all time. I don't know if it's going to be the most exciting fight, honestly, but I think he's going to get the win. And I think he's going to prove to everybody that he is the greatest of all time.
I actually agree with you completely there. The biggest thing for me is I think if this fight gets to the ground, you know, getting taken down 4 times by Francis Ngannou really speaks loudly. But whether it was by surprise or not, you should be able to stuff those takedowns. Francis is not somebody who takes fights to the ground. John Jones, like, where do you even start with him? He's done everything. He's won in every fashion. I don't think there's anybody that you can legitimately compare him to in the UFC. He can knock you out. He can submit you. And I think that's the biggest thing that people forget is before the last 5 title fights, like his last 5 defenses, he took the fight to the ground. He wasn't afraid to. Like, he was very good at getting people to the ground and submitting them.
Oh, he out wrestled Daniel Cormier. I
Yeah,
mean, one of them
yes.
was mostly a stand up battle, but in that, I think it was their first fight. He absolutely
Yeah,
out wrestled Daniel Cormier.
he did. And that was actually the very last time he's ever been taken down in the UFC, 2015. I get it. He's been off for 3 years and he had another 470-day layoff in between there. He still had plenty of fights in that time frame and he still won them all. Whether questionable or not, I firmly stand behind you. To be the champ, you got to beat the champ. And maybe he did lose to Santos. Maybe he didn't. Judges said he won. Um, as for the GOAT, I think this firmly puts him in that seat if he wins. Doesn't matter how he wins. If he wins, he gets cemented as the greatest fighter of all time. Um, it does scare me a little if this fight stays on the feet because Cyril Gane kind of takes a page out of Muhammad Ali's book, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. That I've never seen a man that size move like he does in any sport. It's thoroughly impressive that he is so light on his feet for how big he is. But that is who John Jones is, somebody who's light on their feet for as big as they are. He's only 26 pounds heavier than what he was fighting at on fight night as a light heavyweight. He was rehydrating back up to about 222. He weighed in at 248. That's not a big difference. So the big concern everybody has about, well, is the weight going to take away his athleticism? I don't think it will. I think that 20 pounds is what he was training at normally during his off time. I think he's focused, John Jones. He said recently in an interview, through his last few years fighting for the title, he wasn't scared anymore. Like he knew he could go in there, do his thing, go out and party, and then go back home, and he was going to be the champ. And he said, he's got that fear back, and it's a perfect person to have that fear back for Cyril Gane. If he has that fear, and you could see the confidence in him during the ceremonial weigh-in when they were standing in front of each other, he doesn't look people in the eye. He was interested in this. And interested John Jones kind of takes me back to UFC 165. Him and Alexander Gustafsson. If we could get a fight somewhere in the lines of what that was, that would be absolutely perfect. I don't think we get that kind of fight. I actually do think John Jones is severely interested in this fight. He wants to cement himself as the greatest fighter of all time. I think he's going to win this one handily. I don't think it's going to be super early, but I do think it will be before the start of the fourth round. I wouldn't be surprised if it was sometime in the third round. He starts to grind Cyril Gane down, taking him to the ground, laying on top of him. He's bigger than him. He's heavier than Cyril Gane. I think he can grind him down and get a submission.
Okay, well, we're on the same page there with John Jones winning. We have a little bit of trepidation just because so much respect to Cyril Gane.
Yeah.
He's a killer on there, like you said as well. But ultimately, I think you and I would probably agree right now. Our sentiment is really the only person that can beat John Jones is John Jones.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Most
So
definitely.
anyway, I am so looking forward to this card. Thank you to everybody for watching. We
Yeah. Thank you,
appreciate
guys.
you tuning in and giving us the support. Hope everybody enjoys the fight, and see you guys next time.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next time.